Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next session in the Connected Consumer Series. My name is Andrew Gaffney. I'm Editorial Director with Retail Touchpoints, and really glad you could join us today. This next session is really critical. We talk a lot about omnichannel, and we talk about it a lot in the context of how retailers and brands can better integrate and need to better integrate their physical stores and online presence. But there's a lot more to it than that, and this next session is going to share a lot of great insights around leveraging omnichannel trends for e-commerce marketplace success. As most of you out there know, marketplaces are accounting for a huge segment of revenue now, and with mobile growing as bigger influence in omnichannel, you're going to find some really interesting opportunities about how to take advantage of that with today's speaker. We want to encourage everyone with this session and all sessions in the series to be active on social. We'll be monitoring LinkedIn and Twitter. We ask that you use the hashtag CCS19 for any comments or things that you share, and we'll try to repost those. As you can see on this slide, we have the handles for today's speaker and today's sponsor, so please feel free to include that in anything that you post. Quick background about Retail Touchpoints, the host of the Connected Consumer Series. We are a digital publication covering all trends in retail. We encourage you to join more than 45,000 of your retail peers to take advantage of the digital content that we produce. We have proprietary research that we produce, as well as trend reports on trends around omnichannel, e-commerce, et cetera. So encourage you to take advantage of that, and also follow our social media groups as well. Quick opportunity that I want to point out for everyone in the series, we have a prize pack, so you will have additional chances to win the more sessions that you register to attend. We've got some cool prizes, including AirPods, Starbucks gift cards, and also chances to win a free pass to our Retail Innovation Conference, which is coming up May 6th through the 8th in New York. So be active, be registered, share with your peers, and hopefully you'll be one of our winners. I want to remind everybody today's presentation is scheduled for approximately 30 minutes, and then we're going to take to questions after the presentation. We encourage you to type those in as they come to mind. You can type them right in the questions tab within the On24 platform. Some other cool functionality, you can take advantage of monitoring social right within there. You can also check out some interesting resources related to today's topic. So without further ado, I want to introduce today's speaker. I mentioned a great resource on this topic. Link Walls is the VP of Digital Marketing Strategy with Channel Advisor, where he serves as a strategic consultant to a lot of leading brands and retailers, helping them with strategy and solutions needed to successfully advertise their products online. Link is a digital marketing and e-commerce thought leader, frequent speaker and blogger on topics like today's. Prior to joining Channel Advisor in 2005, Link was a practitioner. He actually managed online marketing for Art.com, a big online retailer. Prior to Art.com, Link was also in the management consulting space, working with leading companies on managing strategy and organizational design. So without further ado, let me turn it over to Link to get us started.
Great. Thanks very much, Andrew. And thank you all of you who are logging in today and sharing some of your day with us. As Andrew mentioned, I think we have got a great topic as part of this series. And so today I'll be talking about leveraging omnichannel trends for marketplace success. Again, my name's Link Walls. I'm Vice President of Digital Marketing Strategy at Channel Advisor. A bit about Channel Advisor before we dive into today's conversation, in case you're not familiar with who we are. Channel Advisor is a leading e-commerce cloud solution that helps brands and retailers grow their business online. And we do that by connecting into more than 100 different channels around the world. So our platform plugs into everything from Amazon to eBay to Walmart to Facebook to Google and literally everything in between. We're privileged to work with close to 3,000 retail and branded manufacturers around the world as that we call our customers. And then in 2018, we processed over $10 billion in transaction volume. And the reason that's so important is that really that data and the trends that we see in that data really fuel the insights that go into our platform and into our services team that drive the strategy for our clients. So that level of volume of data gives us a significant edge in terms of the insights we can bring to bear. Channel Advisor, let's dive into today's topic. As I mentioned, and as Andrew alluded to in the beginning, omnichannel has been certainly a topic that everyone knows and hears about. And specifically today, we want to dive into, why some of the trends that are really fueling omnichannel are really so important on marketplaces, and how these two go together. So to start with, just a little bit of foundational knowledge in terms of the e-commerce landscape and how we got here. I always think it's important to try to understand a little bit of the history, sort of how we got here. It helps inform sort of our view of where things are going. Well, if you think about the early days of e-commerce, right, there was really two different flavors, right? You had the traditional retailers who put up a website, the Searses and JCPenney's of the world and Walmarts of the world, and consumers found them, right? And they looked and found them and began shopping directly from them. And that was certainly a big part of what has grown, the e-commerce business as we know it today. And at the same time, there was the growth of online sellers and pure play e-com businesses that, generally speaking, had a superior value proposition, whether that was lower price, whether that was convenience, whether it was selection, because they just offered simply so much more than a physical retailer ever could. But that was then also a huge part of the growth of e-commerce. And so that was really what was known as omnichannel, and we would argue that we're really entering a new era. But what we would call the first era of omnichannel was really all about getting the experience to be equal across different channels, right? So whether or not you went to the store, whether or not you called in through the phone or on the website, it was really about, in many ways, it was really about not letting dumb things happen, because the Internet introduced so much transparency around things like pricing, primarily, that from a consumer perspective, if the website offered a different price than if you called into an 800 number or in the store, that's easily understood by consumers and easily realize that that's just a bad experience. So the goal here was really to have a seamless experience across all of these different mediums. And now, retailers have struggled with this and are still struggling with this. And part of that is that, many of them deal with legacy technology, legacy systems that really weren't built for the age of e-commerce. And also, I would argue a lack of creativity in terms of thinking about, what is the customer experience? How do we need to evolve to deliver a great customer experience? And so while most retailers were trying to figure this out and wrestle with their omnichannel strategy, Amazon came along and really changed the game for everyone. And if you're not familiar, this is a famous napkin drawing of sort of the Amazon business model. And what Amazon really did well early on is identified three key things that they felt like mattered the most, and that was price, it was selection, and it was convenience, and convenience largely in the form of getting products delivered to me very quickly. And so they really, as part of their growth and this just laser focus on these three key tenets, really have raised the bar for everyone else in the industry. And of course, they've driven enormous growth, right? As everybody knows, we don't need to go through Amazon stats to know that just how significant of a force in e-commerce and commerce overall they are. But we would argue that the bar is rising again as we get into 2019, and specifically that we're really entering what we call the second era of omnichannel. And this is less about just making things equal and reflecting transparency, and it's more about a convergence of channels in ways that really benefit the consumer. So it's about removing friction, but it's also about creating new consumer experiences that consumers simply find better and superior to what they've done before. So why is this happening? Well, I think that consumers are always in the pursuit of finding an easier way, finding things that are better, faster, easier to do, right? And I would argue in many ways that we as an industry have not really kept up with technology. So, if you think about something like Uber or Lyft, the simplicity with which you can simply get a car anywhere in the world with the push of a button, consumers recognize that, hey, the experience on my phone can be pretty amazing, right? And I would argue now, many of us are so jaded from, numerous Uber or Lyft rides that if the car doesn't show up in 4 minutes when it said it would show up in 3, you're bent out of shape. But really what I would argue is that with mobile especially, consumer behavior the game has really risen. So consumers expect more from the technology they use, they expect more from the companies they buy from. And as a result, the industry needs to change, and that's where Omnichannel 2.0 comes in. So what do we mean by Omnichannel 2.0? So as I mentioned earlier, the first wave was really about removing points of friction in the process. And we would argue that now it's really about how do you create just a much better customer experience than you did in the past, right? So across these different dimensions. And so let me give you just a brief update of some of the things that we see across these 4 major dimensions that you see on your screen. So from a store's perspective, stores are certainly far from dead, and you may see headlines about store closings, and one of the things that a lot of those headlines mask is that for every store that's closing, there's in many cases another one that's opening. Now, of course, the footprint of retail is changing, so it's not necessarily an exact replication, but nonetheless, stores are still a vibrant part of the retail economy. And some of the things we see going on there that are pretty interesting is we see the original digital titans of Google and Amazon actually opening physical stores. So Amazon has been opening bookstores. They've got something called the 4-star store where all the products in there are 4 stars or higher. And so they're actually opening physical stores. I think showing that, hey, if there's a value proposition there that's convenient, then that's something they want to do. Now the difference is in the stores that they're opening, they reflect a lot of the elements of e-commerce. So I think most people know on Amazon, the pricing is very much dynamic, and so in an Amazon physical store, the pricing is also dynamic. So if you pick up a product, there's no price tags. It's all dynamic based on what the market is at that time. And so we see Google as well opening stores, selling some of their products, and we also see the rise of new models of stores. So things like the companies like Bonobos and Warby Parker that have really pioneered, what's known as this guide shop model, where very small footprint stores where you don't walk out with anything, but instead you get the order delivered from online later on. And so in many ways, again, that reflects a convergence where the experience of going into a store and trying on clothes is preferable to many consumers. Yet having the selection and low pricing is also preferred, and so it's really combining the best of both worlds in many ways. So lots of interesting things going on in stores, really changing, again, what does that customer experience look like? From a delivery perspective, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but certainly the bar continues to rise with different delivery methods, customers wanting their products just faster and faster, and we don't see any change anytime soon there. From a mobile perspective, when we think about this, it's really mobile's become the primary channel for brands and retailers, and we would argue by far the most important channel. And so consumers are really looking to mobile to see what is the experience that they can do on mobile that's different from a commerce perspective, right? And that may include things like apps or augmented reality. There's a lot of interesting things there. Again, not just to put up a website that reflects exactly what your desktop site does, but more so, what else can you do with mobile? What else can you do with that technology to really drive a better customer experience? And then finally, voice. I think it's when we look at voice, it shares a lot of similarities to where mobile was maybe 10 years ago. Still early on, I think in many respects consumers are trying to figure out exactly how they use it, how it's part of their daily life. But I think what we see in voice is a recognition from really, the leaders, in this case Amazon and Google, that whoever controls that gateway to the internet through voice is going to be in a very powerful position, and hence the massive investment in everything from smart speakers to all sorts of devices that are really a net new category that just didn't even really exist even just 2-3 years ago. So lots of things going on there. So why do we think these trends are so important to marketplaces, and how do you think about that opportunity? So we really believe that the marketplace platforms are at the intersection of Omnichannel 2.0. And we truly do live in a platform economy now, and I think the rise of marketplaces are really a testament to that. So let's talk about the opportunity that we see on marketplaces. It's enormous. So in the U.S. alone, Internet retailer estimated $330 billion sold on U.S. marketplaces to U.S. customers in 2018. Half of the units sold on Amazon were from third-party sellers, so companies that are selling as a third party through the marketplace. So enormous opportunity there. Talk about mobile and marketplaces. So this is some data from eMarketer from 2018 holiday, and one of the things they found in some of their data was that more than half of the visits were on a phone. And we actually see in our data at ChannelAdvisor even more than that. We see actually even a stronger shift towards mobile, and I'll talk in a second about why that matters so much. Google had some similar stats. They were quoting that over the holiday, close to 2/3 of shoppers made a purchase on their phone, which is up 33% year over year. So continued growth in mobile, and so why does that matter so much for marketplaces? Well, one of the reasons is that when we look at the data in terms of the penetration of apps and the amount of apps that consumers download, generally speaking, consumers are not downloading an app from every retailer that they go to. And so this graph gives you a little bit of data. There's a survey. They asked 18 to 34-year-olds what app they can't go without. And what's interesting about this is really the predominant apps on mobile really are not commerce related, with the exception of Amazon. And when we look at other data, what we tend to see is that only those companies that really drive significant repeat purchases throughout the year are the ones that have a really strong loyalty and following on apps. So certainly sites like Target and eBay and Amazon, Macy's, Walmart, companies, if you think of companies like that, that really actually show up in the app penetration data, and everybody else is pretty small. And so the reason this matters so much is that we really believe that mobile is really narrowing the options for consumers to a small number of these really popular apps. So when you think about your behavior and consumers' behavior, we look at the data when it comes to mobile. When you have that moment of inspiration, or wherever you realize, oh, I need something, right, or I want to buy something, generally speaking, consumers are not typing in a URL on their phone, right? They're using the Google Assistant to ask Google for that, which is going to then, of course, run a search and direct you through Google. Or they're pulling up an app like Amazon, where they know that they sell most things, and that's going to be their starting point. And so it's interesting. Amazon reported late last year that 70% more customers worldwide had shopped on the Amazon app, and so significant growth there. And the reason again is that because these companies and all of the ones I mentioned earlier, most of them at least, represent a marketplace, have such strong penetration on mobile, really marketplaces are really a way to ride the trend of mobile shopping. It doesn't mean that if you're a retailer, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have a mobile website. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be optimizing that. But what it does mean is that that's only going to get you so far, because again, so many consumers are going to come into mobile through one of these gateways, whether that's an Amazon or a Google or another large marketplace. So the trend that marketplaces really fit that ties in with omnichannel is selection. I mentioned earlier on that really, the rise of e-commerce, a big part was about just having, access to this endless aisle of products. And marketplaces are really a way that tap directly into that. So Amazon has more than 350 million products for sale at any given point in time, so just enormous selection. And that's, obviously that, thinking back to those key tenets that I referenced from Amazon, that's a big part of why and a big part of the success there. The other aspect of marketplaces that ties into this goal of removing friction for consumers is the flexibility of checkout and the use of a shared identity. So one of the things that marketplaces have enabled, and I think sometimes people forget about this when you think about, well, I bought something from Amazon. It's like, well, you actually, when you bought something on Amazon, you may have bought it from 4 different companies, right, that were all through, the shared checkout. And so, marketplaces, because they have such, breadth of selection, and have a universal cart, it really makes that shopping experience very easy for consumers, right? So again, consumers are constantly looking for easier experiences. How do they get things done faster and easier and with fewer steps than they did before? So this is an example from Google Express, which is Google's latest foray into the marketplaces world. And so, in this case, this is a universal checkout, right? So as a consumer, I can go in and buy something from Target, Nike, and Jockey all in one transaction, right? And so that ability to, again, cut out steps, remove friction, and buy all in one place is a big part of what is driving growth on marketplaces, and again, is really a very much an omnichannel trend that we're seeing. So another aspect when it comes to convenience is shipping and delivery. And a stat from Google that over the last 2 years, mobile searches for same-day shipping have gone up 44%. And so, as a consumer base, we've just gotten more and more impatient, right? I mean, what used to be considered fast shipping is now not nearly as fast to most consumers. And so, consumers just get, again, the bar just keeps going up. Some interesting data. They asked consumers how many consumers percentage that expected to receive goods within 2 days, and the answer is 62%. So a solid majority. And then they asked them how many are willing to pay for 2-day shipping, and the number is significantly less, right? And this is the chart that gives your CFO heartburn, because they're trying to figure out how can we move packages and tap into this consumer demand, because if they are, consumers are clearly wanting free shipping, but they're not necessarily willing to pay for it. And this is where marketplaces can help with that, right? Because they've got, in many cases, fulfillment options. Certainly, the way that Amazon is tackling this is investing, quite heavily into logistics and fulfillment. So, again, all with that goal of how do they get products to consumers faster. And so, one of the things that's important as you look at marketplaces is understand what are the shipping and fulfillment norms on that marketplace. What are the requirements you have to hit? What does the consumer expect on that site? And then what are the resources or programs that those marketplaces have available that allow you to tap into that and maybe makes that something that you can do a lot easier. So, I think for most retailers, if you have 1 or 2 fulfillment centers in the U.S., that's pretty expensive to get products to people in 2 days throughout the entire country. So the ability to tap into a network of, either third-party fulfillment companies or something like Fulfillment by Amazon, or both, is pretty important to hit this consumer demand that consumers are really asking for. Amazon has certainly invested heavily in that. And so what Amazon is doing, because again, they really are, that the Prime and the value proposition of Prime being free 2-day shipping has really driven so much of this trend. And so they're making enormous investments in enabling that fast and free shipping. So whether it's in the form of trucks, right? They have a massive logistics network that they're building out. Airplanes, they now have over 40 airplanes that are Prime Air. As well as an airfield in Ohio or Northern Kentucky rather, that they own. And then vans, they just about 3, 4, 5 months ago at least 20,000 of these vans, these Mercedes Sprinter vans. And so Amazon is making a huge bet when they think about where they're putting their money on the Omnichannel 2.0 scale. It's really about convenience, and it's about getting products to consumers faster, and that's really where they're investing very, very heavily. Now, really our belief is that there's no single model that's going to win here, and we see a lot of other delivery models emerging. So things like you see here on the left, Walmart grocery pickup is one where, again, it's a blurring, and it's arguably creating a much better experience where, as a consumer, right, I'm shopping for groceries on my phone through the app. And then I'm picking them up in store, right, through a process that is optimized for that. And so if you think about where we've come from, I think the initial buy online, pick up in store, models that retailers put forward were pretty bad in a lot of ways, right? It's go to a store, go to some customer service counter where they don't really know what you're looking for, and it's just not optimized for that experience. That's really changing, and so when we look at things like grocery pickup from Walmart, very slick experience, very good experience that really I would argue has created a better consumer experience. Now, is that e-commerce? Is it in-store commerce? It's really both, right? It's really and I think that's the key to Omnichannel 2.0 is that really it's a blurring of things. It's a converging of these different business models and technologies. So grocery pickup, click and collect, with lockers, you certainly see that a lot in Europe. So again, we really don't believe that any single one model is going to win out here. I think consumers will optimize for what works best for them, and if that means that it's getting something shipped to their house, then that's what they'll go for in this situation, and if it's picking something up on their way home from work, then that's what they'll go for. So I think consumers ultimately are going to optimize for the situation that they have at hand and what works best for that situation. So just a couple of the different trends that we see across Omnichannel impacting marketplaces, and how marketplaces, again, is really benefiting from these Omnichannel trends. So let's shift gears and just talk about, if you're embarking on a marketplace strategy, a couple of best practices. And there's loads of resources on the ChannelAdvisor blog and website, and this is something we've been doing for a long time. So there's lots of resources out there. But just to give you a brief overview of a couple things to think about. I think first and foremost, when you're embarking on an expansion strategy like this through marketplaces, is really think about what are the goals that you have for this. And there's just a few of them here, right? It may be, you want to be protecting your brand, and so your brand's being sold on Amazon or eBay or Walmart, and you want to really present your brand in a better way, right? So that could be a goal. Could be to just increase an audience, increase, just simply more sales. Could be to liquidate stock. Could be all of these things. So I think first and foremost, thinking about the goals. What are the goals going into this, so you can measure accordingly. And then the next we always get is, well, which marketplaces should I be selling on? And there's really no single answer there, because the marketplace landscape consists of very broad marketplaces like an Amazon or a Walmart or an eBay that cover a lot of different categories, right? They have an enormous penetration across everything from automotive to fashion to footwear and literally just about everything in between. But then there's also a lot of smaller niche marketplaces that, again, are focused on a single category and do quite well in an individual category. So this is just a screenshot of some of the benchmarking data in the ChannelAdvisor platform that we utilize to help answer some of these questions for retailers. Of where's the best place that I should be going? Where do I invest my time and my effort in terms of a marketplace strategy? And then finally, it's really planning for growth and making sure that you're doing this in a way that will scale. From time to time, we do see cases where a company will start selling on marketplaces, ramp up very quickly, and so quickly they just can't handle the volume. So I think you really need to think through, from an order perspective and an infrastructure perspective, do you have the systems in place to handle increased order volume? Is your order management system, is all of those things worked out so that as you get a flow of orders coming in, you can fulfill those on time or faster. And then finally, it's really important to understand what are the requirements and what are the policies of each marketplace. So you need to know, what are their fulfillment policies? Like, so if it needs to be shipped, does it need to be shipped the same day or by the next business day? Like, you need to understand all those nuances, because ultimately every marketplace, again, they all work a little bit differently, but ultimately they're going to be judging your performance because they want to deliver a high standard of quality for consumers. And so to the extent that you're not operationally set up to do these things, you can wind up flaming out pretty quickly. So again, plan ahead, plan, prepare, perform, as the slide indicates. And so with that, we're just about out of time, so let me just summarize the 4 key takeaways from today. So again, the key takeaways from today as we think about omnichannel trends for e-commerce marketplaces. Again, first and foremost, those consumer trends overlap really significantly with marketplaces. So the way that the consumer is going, marketplaces certainly are benefiting from a lot of those different things. When we think about marketplaces and the value proposition there, certainly broad selection, like we talked about, delivery options, and then the mobile presence is a really important one, again, that are very strong on marketplaces. When we think about having a strategy, having a diversified marketplace strategy, this is really true beyond marketplaces, just channels in general, is really key. You want to make sure that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, right? So if there may be a marketplace that's doing great for you, and that's awesome, but again, you want to supplement that with other marketplaces that are out there. Maybe they're smaller, maybe they're not growing as fast, but again, you want to have a diversified strategy so that if one of those hits a bump, you have others to fall back on. Fourth, it's just important to identify which marketplace make the most sense. Again, take the time up front to make sure before you just go gung-ho and signing up for this site or that site to make sure it makes sense for your business. And then finally, again, just like any new business initiative, just make sure you plan in order to successfully execute. And so with that is all we had for you today. We hope you have found this content useful and informative. My contact information is here, as well as the Channel Advisor website can be a resource. And I think now we'll take some questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Link. That was great. Provided a lot of really good information and insights in a compact, kept to the time, so I appreciate that. We've got some great questions coming in. I want to remind everyone in the audience, you can go ahead and type any questions that you have right in the Q&A tab. If we don't get to your question, I'll ask Link to follow up with you directly. And just to echo what Link said, I would definitely check out some of the blogs Link writes on these topics and some of the resources that they have available as well. All right, so let me jump into some of the questions we have, Link. You talked about some of the different marketplaces. We had a question from Justin. He said that so far they've been growing pretty heavily just through their own stores and online presence, and he's asking what marketplaces he should be selling on.
Yeah, good question, Justin. So again, I would, we're happy to help, dive into the specifics in a deeper conversation. But I think certainly looking at, you got to start with sort of the very broad marketplaces, right? So certainly Amazon, eBay, Walmart, Google. I'm talking here in the U.S. For starters, and then from there, it really is a function of looking at your category and finding out where those products are sold and where they're strongest. A super simple, not scientific way to do that is just do some Google searches on your products and find out, what marketplaces are showing up, right? And that's a good way to indicate, the competitiveness and the where the consumer base may be. But again, look at the overall landscape, set out a plan and a roadmap to pick off some of these and maybe a phased approach depending on your resources and how aggressive you want to be, and then go after it.
Okay, great. Tina is selling on Amazon, and she said she's starting to see a lot of her competitors advertising, I guess, there and other places. She's asking for any insights into how that works and any best practices around it.
Sure. Yeah, this is one of the biggest trends we've seen in the marketplace landscape and the biggest change over the last 18 months to 2 years. What's happened on Amazon, and we're starting to see it in other places as well, is that it's just gotten harder and harder to get in front of the consumer. I talked earlier about the amount of selection, the amount of products on Amazon, in the hundreds of millions. And so standing out is very difficult. And so what we're seeing is advertising on Amazon growing very fast. And in fact, Amazon's now the third largest ad platform in the U.S. behind only Google and Facebook. And so we at this point really consider, as to the question, advertising on Amazon is really mandatory at this point, we believe, to be successful. So it's not enough anymore to just have a good product and a good price point. Maybe there's some exceptions in some really niche products with very little competition, but generally speaking, having an advertising strategy needs to be part of your overall marketplace strategy, just simply so you can get the visibility on the platform. Otherwise, you can wind up selling there, but really not capturing your full potential because you're just not getting in front of enough consumers.
Okay, great points. Jeff asked about Google Express. I think you might have touched on it when you went over some of those quickly, but he's asking if you could give some more details on how it works and any suggestions around it.
Sure. So Google Express is part of a program from Google that they launched about this time last year called Google Shopping Actions in the U.S. And Google Shopping Actions is really a platform that enables transactions on Google, right? So through various means. And so one of the first ones is what's called Google Express. So Google Express, you can go to it now if you haven't seen it, at express.google.com. Essentially is a marketplace with a lot of retailers selling through it. And so the way it works is very similar to other marketplaces. You get them your product data, and then the transaction happens on Google, and then the fulfillment is all done by the retailer. And so, what we see from Google again is that they're really trying to take friction out of this process, and so they're really trying to capitalize on. Obviously there's millions and millions and millions of people searching every day for, with retail intent, right? Somebody that sits down and says, I'm searching for a blender, or I'm searching for a screwdriver, or whatever. And so what they're really trying to do is to make that a more seamless process where that consumer can, especially on mobile, click through, and if Google knows their identity, and again, that's a big part of that. The cart strategy is Google knows your identity, then the process to transact is much easier than getting dumped off to a retailer's website. So that's Google Shopping Actions and Google Express. We've done some previous webinars on that as well, so there's lots of deeper dives on that if that's of interest.
Okay, great. Question from Danielle, which is kind of the billion-dollar question, I guess. She said, given the stats you cited on shipping, how important is offering free shipping on everything we sell?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, I've had many people over my career, they remind me that free shipping is not free to the person who's shipping, which I understand. So it's a balance. And I think one of the things I would encourage people to do is really test into this. So I think it depends a lot on the competitive space you're in. So, if you're in a space where your competitors are not offering free shipping, or they have a pretty high free shipping threshold, it may not be as important to you. But I do think the trends, every data point, every stat you look at are pretty clear. Consumers want it, faster and free or close to free. And we don't really see that reversing. I don't see a world in which consumers decide that they're comfortable getting products slower than they used to. It's sort of like internet speed, right? Nobody's going to say, no, my internet's working too fast. I want you to slow down these page loads. So it's never going to happen. So I think it depends a lot on your competitors, but I would encourage people to test into this. So especially on your website, what we see in the data is that the free shipping threshold makes a big difference for conversion rate. And so if you think about how much traffic you're driving to your site, how much you're paying for that traffic, what does a boost in conversion rate do for you? And so test into that. Try some tests where you change the threshold for free shipping, or where make it free shipping on everything, and see how much of a lift you get from that, and how much that really makes every ad dollar work for you more. So to the extent you're driving traffic to your site, you're paying for that. You're paying for those clicks. and they're having to work a little bit harder because if you're not offering free shipping or if your threshold's not very competitive.
Okay, great. All right, we're going to try to get one more question and link. These have been great responses, great insights. And then if we don't get to your questions, a few we won't get to, as I mentioned, I'll share those with Link, and hopefully we can follow up with you directly. The last question is from Heidi. I wanted to get your perspective on Link, which she said they're starting to look at global expansion, and asked if you can give any insights or suggestions what to look for in terms of marketplaces on a global scale.
Yeah, great question. Again, there's a lot of resources we have on the site around cross-border. We definitely believe marketplaces are a great entry strategy when you think about an international strategy. It's a very easy way, and I know certainly Amazon and others, eBay's global shipping program is one of the simplest programs to do. There's a number of different programs that really allow you to tap into what is that consumer demand in a given geography to see, how big of a market it could be for your product. So. Different marketplaces in every geography. We don't really have time to go through sort of the differences today between Europe and Asia and South America, but look at the resources on the Channel Advisor site. And again, I'd start with the things where you're already selling. So if you're already selling through Amazon, look to the programs that they have through things like FBA and others where you can quickly and easily dip your toe in the water of a different market and be able to tell how lucrative is that market for your products, because I think that's always the biggest unknown when you think about international expansion.
Okay, great. Link, I want to thank you again. I thought it was a really outstanding presentation, great insights, useful, and great responses to the questions. So appreciate your time.
Happy to do it.
All right, we're going to wrap up. Thanks, everybody, for attending. A couple of quick housekeeping reminders I want to point out. I'm at the beginning with our prize box. A few lucky folks will have a chance to win passes to our Retail Innovation Conference. That's coming up May 6th through the 8th. We've got some great speakers on Omnichannel and some of the related topics, so check out the agenda for that at the retailinnovationconference.com. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending and remind you that this session will be recorded. You'll get a link to go back and review it or share it with your peers, so keep an eye out for that. And also a reminder to check out the Resource Center and grab any related resources that were there.